All right. So, Joe, before we start, we just need to have you, for the video's sake, introduce yourself and, say where you're from. Okay.
All right.
Is he on?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Del Bosque, and I'm a farmer here west of Firebaugh. I'm also a member of the California Water Commission. So today I thought I would come and talk to you folks a little bit about storage, right? Because most people, what they know about storage is when they drive down the highway and they see the sign that says more dam storage, or they say dams, not trains. That's usually what people think about when they think about storage. But we've actually been doing a lot about storage. And this goes back actually to about 2009 when we were actually kind of blindsided out here on the west side with a 10% water allocation. If you farmed on the west side, you remember that 10% was a big blow. Because we'd never had 10% before. The lowest we'd ever had was 25%, and we survived those. But 10% in 2009 really hit us blindly. It was due to a lot of things. There was a drought. There were issues with the smelt in the salmon, and then of course the biological opinions. And so that was the perfect time to move to try to find some solutions for water. And so a lot of folks started, circling the wagons and trying to see how we can get some storage. So there was a lot of pressure put on Sacramento to do that. I was involved with that with the Latino Water Coalition. If you remember the march that we did, and then we also had rallies up at the Capitol steps to do more storage, and we tried to get the legislature motivated and moving towards storage. Now, when you try to get storage, any revenue bond has to have 2/3 of the legislature. So it required a bipartisan effort. And of course, at that time, I don't think even the Democrats had a 2/3 vote. So we had to get everybody involved, and we did. We got it passed in 2009. But any revenue bond has to also be passed by the public. So it was to be put on the ballot in 2010. But Governor Schwarzenegger at that time said, we don't think it's going to pass. The state is in a recession. Let's push it off to the next election. So he kicked it down the road to 2012. We had a new governor then. This new governor, he had his revenue bills that he wanted through. He had some taxes or something he wanted passed. So he says, let's get this water bond off of the table because mine bills are more important. And so he kicked it down the road to 2014. It did go on the ballot. By then we had a series of drought years, and so it passed pretty handily. By that time people knew there was a drought. It's kind of funny, people don't know there's a drought until they read about it in the paper. And so by 2014, it was passed pretty well. People by that time understood there was a drought. So the bill was passed, a $7.5 billion bond, of which 2.7 was going to be for storage. The rest of it was going to be in DWR's hands to help make water system improvements, whether groundwater cleanup or improved water systems. It was at their discretion. But the 2.7 billion that was in what was called or is called Chapter 8 was going to be handed over to the Water Commission, which I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger back in 2010. And it was going to be done different than any other dams had ever been done. Okay, in the past, a bond was passed. It was passed to build this storage project. It went right there. This was different. It was going to be a competitive grant-making process. So that meant that that proponents of projects would come and apply for the actually kind of matching funds they weren't even going to get all of the money that they need. They were going to be able to apply for up to half of the cost of the project. But again, this is not like any storage projects in the past. What was going to be funded here by this money was public benefits, okay? And unfortunately, this is something that's difficult for people to understand, okay? What are public benefits? Okay, benefits are something that benefits all the people of the state of California, okay? Farmers and their need for water is not a public benefit, okay? If water for people is not a public benefit, believe it or not. So what are public benefits? Okay, public benefits, there's 5 of them, okay? The first one and foremost is ecosystem improvements. And in this bond, you have to show that you were going to provide some ecosystem improvements, particularly, and you had to have some ecosystem improvements to the delta and its tributaries. So that could be anywhere from the San Joaquin River, all the rivers on the east side, Sacramento River, now Southern California, right? If they wanted to apply for money, they had to go about it in a different way. In fact, I believe the Kings River was excluded because it kind of flows the other way. The Trinity, which water does come over into the Central Valley, was also excluded. So it was basically the watershed that flows into the delta. The other public benefits are water quality. Projects that help improve water quality, particularly in the delta. Okay, and delta is, of course, always has issues with water quality, with salinity or whatever. Then you've got flood control. Everybody knows what that is. Emergency response. So let's say there's a catastrophe and water is cut off to Southern California. Say there's a levees break, they collapse in the delta, the water shut off. If someone can show that they could provide water in an emergency like that, that's a public benefit. Now, their water supply is not a public benefit, but in an emergency, it is. So you have to understand that, this is the way this works. And then, of course, the other one is recreation. That is a public benefit. If you build a project and it provides recreation for the public, that also counts. So the amount of money that any project could receive is based on the public benefits that they provide. And there is going to be a ranking system of which ones are more important. And of course, ecosystem is first and foremost, and at least half of the money half of the benefits have to be for ecosystem improvements. So if you're asking for, say, $1 billion, at least half of that has to be ecosystem improvements. If you fall below that, then you cannot ask for the billion. And then which type of projects are eligible for storage? There are basically 3. One is surface storage, and among surface storage are included CalFed projects like the big dams. There's regional projects and local projects. But then there's also groundwater storage below ground, and you've got some conjunctive use and reservoir reoperation projects that are also eligible. Okay. So this process now we've been going for a couple of years in the commission, formulating how we're going to evaluate these projects. That's what we've been doing. Believe me, we're not just over there sitting on our hands. We've been doing this for a while. We call them regulations. How do we look at these projects and how do we evaluate them so that we can make a selection? Okay, so we've been doing that for quite a while now. And the regulations are perfect. We've already come to a few hiccups here where we passed this regulation, but well, maybe we could have made something a little different. We've already come across some of those. We hope not too many more. But now we came to the point where back in March, from March to August, we opened up for applications. So anybody who wanted to apply for these funds could submit an application. And believe me, the application took a while just to formulate how we make the application. We were expecting over 100. And by the time everything came down to what they had to, all the requirements, it whittled down to 12. Okay. And one of the requirements in here is that they have to show resiliency. And if you're in the capital, resiliency is a buzzword. Okay, just like sustainability, resiliency is a buzzword. They have to show resiliency. That means that they have to show that their value is going to be still as good in 2070 as it is when it's built. Okay. How do you do that? They get economists and they do these studies that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to show that these benefits will still be good in 2070. Now, that alone kicked out a lot of small projects. We knew that was going to happen, but but a lot of the folks on the commission said we got to have this. We got to have this show that we have that these projects will still be good. But these studies are like $500,000, so it kicked out a lot of small projects. Only 12 left. Out of those, one didn't seem to meet the criteria, so we're down to 11 now. And you can view those on the California Water Commission website. If you go there, you can see those 11 projects. I didn't bring a list of them with me, but they do include the 3 big CalFed projects, which is Sites, Temperance, and Los Vaqueros. If you're not familiar with Los Vaqueros, there's an existing dam up in Contra Costa County. They're going to raise it up, increase their storage. It's a CalFed project. And then you've got some, I think there's a small regional project up on the east side of Sacramento. There's some ground storages down south of here in Kings and Kern County. And there's even one down in Southern California. Okay, so how do those folks in Southern California, how do they help the improvement in health for the Delta? Well, the way they do that is that they are somehow improving their local supply, and they're going to have to give up their supply of the Delta. Okay, so just because you build storage up there doesn't mean that you can just continue to take water from the Delta. This is the only way that those folks there can improve the ecosystem of the Delta, is to give up some of their supply. And so that's how I think there's one in Inland Empire and one in San Diego County. So that's where we are, and we are now in this coming year going to start evaluating the projects. It's not going to be an easy job. We obviously have a good staff that can bring us information on all of these. The project proponents also have to come up with how do they determine their public benefits, and some of the public benefits are going to be prioritized. That's more important. So we will have also input from people like Fish and Wildlife, what do they call it?
Fish and Wildlife, yeah.
Fish and Wildlife and state. Right? We talk about federal, the state, Fish and Wildlife, and some of the other agencies, maybe EPA, Water Board, and some of these other agencies will help us determining which ones are greater, which benefits are of greater value to the ecosystems. So that's going to go up until, well, we'll be reviewing them until April of next year, and then we'll obviously go through a lot of public testimony. We always do on a lot of these things where people can come in and make comments. It's going to be a grueling process, and it'll be sometime in the future, I don't know when, that we'll be able to select projects We obviously are not going to be able to fund all of the projects. The total of these 11 projects that they're asking for is $5.7 billion. We got $2.7 billion that we have in this bond. So we'll have to see how we can invest in some of the projects and try to get the biggest bang for our bucks. Because we actually do look at this as an investment. We look at it as, I look at it as a partnership. There's somebody proposing this project. They're trying to explain how much good it does, and and we will have to discriminate between them and see which one does the most good for the state. I look at it as both in terms of public benefits, but also in how does it work as improving the water system of the state, because we want to improve the water system of the state, right? I think that when people pass the bond, they have the drought in mind, and they are interested in how we can have a little bit more reliable water supply. So that's what it's all about.
Joe, you mentioned CalFed projects.
Yes.
Would the federal government match 1 for 1? If we have 2.7 and they put in 2.7, we have almost 5.
They've not committed to that.
But the federal government has been brought into the.
I think that some of the project proponents may ask the federal government if they will help fund this. The federal government cannot be one of the project proponents. In other words, the federal government can't come and say, we're going to build this reservoir, so we're going to apply for the funds. Federal government cannot apply for these funds. We actually have a list here of who can be eligible for these funds. That is public agencies, nonprofits, public utilities, federally recognized Indian tribes, state Indian tribes, and mutual water companies. So if the federal government can put in, they can add money to these projects, but they can't be a project proponent. And some of these projects are, are trying to get some help, because if they don't get 50% of their cost from the bond, the users have to make up, are putting in the rest of it, right? So it is going to be a heavy lift for some of these projects that the total costs are $2.5 or $3 million. That's a heavy lift that the users have to come up with. That's something different than has been done in the past. So sure, they're looking for funds from the federal government, but I the way Washington is right now, I don't know how much help they're going to get.
Yeah. So my question is, the commission is going to decide what's going to get funded?
Yes.
Okay. And how many members are on that?
There's 9 members. Yes.
Oh.
Representing the whole state of California,
Yes.
or just from
The commissioners are from across the state. Yeah.
That's not bad.
No, it's not. And they're pretty diverse. There are 3 from the San Joaquin Valley. There's myself, Dave Orth, who some of you may remember. He was general manager of the district out there. Very knowledgeable in water. There's another commissioner from the Visalia area named Maria Herrera. She'd been involved a lot with disadvantaged communities and water quality issues with those communities. So it's a diverse group. They're not all coming from ag districts.
with the sale of Temperance Flat. How is that proposed if it costs $1 billion? And then, I don't know the numbers, but you said you would share something on Temperance Flat and how that's to function financially, and what districts would pick up the other half, or what users would pick up the other half?
Well, let's talk a little bit about Temperance Flat as an example of how these are coming together. Temperance Flat was actually put together by, they formed a joint powers authority that was put together by, I think, 5 or 6 counties that came together and communities within those counties. And they're partnering with some of the water districts here in the valley, some from Westside, some from Eastside. And they're, you know, they're obviously, so the users are gonna have to put up quite a bit of money because it's either a $2.5 or $3 billion project.
The whole Timperance Flat project.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah, this is different than other storage projects that have been done in the past.
So there's a subcommittee to help score these projects, to help the commission, help them decide which way to.
Right, we will have probably a panel of experts to help us with that. A panel made up of probably economists and scientists and so forth to help us, because we're not scientists, we're economists, so they will help us to determine the economics of the benefits. So we can evaluate which are more important, or which provide more bang for our buck, because we're in charge of investing that money.
A lot of gravity there, I mean, with
Oh, yeah.
weight on it.
So if Temperance Flat were to be chosen, for example, and it says about 2.7 million, so if 1 million was given to Temperance Flat, to use even numbers, the other 1.7 would have to be raised by the end users.
Right. Or whoever's involved with it, they determine how they're gonna do it, and they come up with the rest of it.
And we don't know if there's federal money yet involved in that.
Don't know. I imagine they're probably trying to get the federal government to help out, but I don't know if that's happening.
The San Joaquin Restoration Project, to me, they never should have done that until Timperance Flat was. But that's just me, I don't know that about it. You know, why, but are they gonna contribute, the federal government gonna contribute part of the San Joaquin Restoration to help put in Timperance Flat?
No, I don't think so. In fact, if I may be wrong, but if I understand this right, the mitigation of the San Joaquin River due to that settlement does not enter into the public benefits. It has to be new public benefits.
I thought they had trouble accomplishing what they tried to accomplish before, lack of water, and this would, and so they need to be reintroduced.
No, we start off with a clean slate. That is
Whole new story.
That is, yeah.
You look at so many projects in the state, tunnel project.
What's that?
You look at a tunnel project that may or may not happen.
Right.
Somebody's gonna be paying for part of that. Somebody's gonna be paying for part of a reservoir. And you look at the federal government, well, why aren't they in on high-speed rail? They're not. Why aren't they in on restoration? They're way behind on that. I mean, the money's just not coming into the valley for these projects.
No. I think the tunnel project has to be all user funded. I don't know if there's any, you know, if there's any other money.
I think that it's user funded, but I don't know.
I think they'd like to get some public
Yeah.
money, and they may, I don't know,
But it's gonna end up coming out of your pocket if you're a user.
Right.
And the reservoir, same thing, and a chunk of it. if
A chunk of it
in
is.
your pocket.
and
If all
just
these
because
things
you
happen
can,
at once, it costs a lot.
and just because you can qualify for up to 50% doesn't mean that you get 50%, because we don't have enough money to go around. And so we're not sure at this point who's gonna get funded and how much they're gonna get funded. All we know is we have $2.7 billion to work with, and there's been about $5.7 billion requested.
Well, it's,
Sobering.
So it's a good and it's bad. I mean, you start the ball rolling.
Yes,
2.7, but
it's not-
You really can't get anywhere. You get the feeling, yes.
Right. There is going to be some storage built, but it isn't going to be like it was in the past. The users have to come up with quite a bit of money for this.
I mean, it's hard to convince whomever that the whole state or even the government, I mean, the whole United States benefits from what we do here in agriculture.
You're absolutely right.
And, but
But they don't consider that a public benefit. feeding the nation.
How about our national security?
Does not consider public benefit.
It's sad.
So you may prioritize, you may all agree on how, what the priority of funding should be, but that actual end amount of funding may not be enough to complete the project. In which case, you then go back and say, well, you have to do another analysis or to cut other things out so that you can at least complete a project, or you just,
Well, I think the users have to do that. Project proposal.
So money may be coming back in because we can't get the rest of the money, so we're giving you the money back or the.
well, yeah.
So that's gotta be part of the scoring is, can you take it to the finish line?
That's right.
To the what?
To the finish line. If we're gonna give you this
Yeah.
money, can you raise the rest of it to get there? And that needs to be part of the scoring too.
Well, that's true. I mean, we do have to take into consideration, do they have the funds to finish it?
Yes.
Right. If it's a $2.5 billion project and let's say we only fund 800 million of it, do they have the funds to finish it? It's not going to be up to us. It's really going to be up to them. But we are, we are sensitive to the fact that some of these projects need the funding or they're not going to be viable. At least I understand it. I think some of the other commissioners understand
Yeah.
that if we don't fund them a certain amount, they're not going to make it.
So that's back to what percentage up to 50%
Yes.
you don't have leeway to go over that.
Right. So we're not even sure if all of the projects are going to get money. Because there's 11 of them. We're not sure if they'll all get some money, and we're not sure how much money they'll get.
Well, the longer the process goes on, that 2.7 billion is going to be worth 1 billion. I mean, that's really, of course, there's a construction cost,
Yeah.
Of course.
and the projects, I don't see how it's even,
Well, you have to start, you have to do something.
start somewhere.
You gotta get started, you gotta start working on it.
The good thing is that that money is, and the bond is continuously appropriated. So they can't take it
Oh,
to do something else.
that's good. No, that is-
We were very adamant in keeping that in the bond at the beginning. Is the state cannot take that money and do something else with it. So
Is it accruing interest? That 2.7 billion? Is
I
it-
don't know. I don't think so.
get that. You get .0002.
You know what interest
Good
rates
luck
are, right?
with that.
Is the state using it temporarily? Are they borrowing it or they can't touch it at all? They're just sitting in a fund of its own?
I don't know where that money is, but it's supposedly
It's
the state
being
can
used.
use it.
Somewhere.
It's in the loop.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.